Brenton Strange is entering the 2023 NFL Draft. He's going to play in the Rose Bowl, but he is leaving Penn State after the season is finished. And yeah, it stings to see him go, but I think Penn State's going to be in good hands with the tight end room next year.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. My name is Zach Seyko, your host, and I am privileged to be joined by another guest this week. It's the Rose Bowl, so we're going to have we're going to get you the most insight, the most information, the best takes about this game. And that is Matty Fresh, Matt Freiler over on the other end. Matt, thanks for coming back on and doing another Locked On episode with me.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Zach. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, and it's great to get your perspective. You're actually, by the time this is up, you're going to be up in the air, flying over to Pasadena.
Yeah, well, actually heading to Vegas. Like I think most Penn State fans realized that flying into LAX was a little ridiculous, at least when I booked. I don't know how it looks now. I'm sure it's probably even worse now. But yeah, flying into Vegas, spent a New Year's Eve out there watching the college football playoff in one of the sports books, and then heading over New Year's Day to LA. So a couple-hour drive, and excited for a trip. Should be cool to see both cities, and fired up for Monday.
And then, so I guess our sponsor's pretty fitting for today's episode then, huh?
Always with us, you know it.
So we're before we get into the Rose Bowl, actually, we're starting off with Brenton Strange, and then another piece of recent news, and that is in fact Storm Duck actually is going to be transferring in. So first, I want to get your thoughts on Brenton Strange, then the whole secondary situation and why Storm Duck could be valuable transferring in, but ultimately your take on it, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the Rose Bowl in the second and third segment, and finishing up with our predictions. I'm sure everyone's eager to hear what score prediction you have, and myself. I've been saving it, even though I've kind of given hints that I do like Penn State in this one, but that's for later. So Brenton Strange, are you surprised by this at all?
Yeah, I've been discussing this one with a lot of people, and I was, I guess, kind of surprised that we weren't getting any news like either way. And he was just kind of hanging in the balance. And then obviously some more rumblings were coming out as the month went on. And he was like the one where you weren't sure, right? Everybody else was kind of clear cut, whether they were coming back or going pro. And Brenton Strange, you just never knew really what his decision was going to be. And obviously his birthday yesterday, he comes out and decides to declare. And let me ask you, Zach, how much is this Brenton Strange knowing that he can be a top round draft pick, like maybe a top 4 round draft pick, versus maybe looking at that tight end room with Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren and some of the things they were able to do down the stretch and saying, well, maybe my options would be either transfer or declare, and deciding declare might be the better option instead of trying to transfer. Because I mean, there's so many mouths to feed in this offense. And when you got a tight end room like that, it's hard to be the guy. And he was able to be the guy because Theo Johnson was so banged up all season. But with a healthy
Warren
Johnson
too.
and a healthy Warren, like if those 3 guys stay healthy, there's just not enough passes to throw, especially when you got running backs that need 30 carries a game. So I understand where he's coming from. I wish him the best. Brenton Strange had an exceptional season. There was so many great highlights, from the touchdown against Purdue to the leap over the pylon. I believe it was against Ohio. Just a bowling ball, just guys bouncing off him. And what I liked about Brenton Strange is I think he put Sean Clifford at ease in a lot of these situations, because he was such a good check down man, where he just always seemed to be open. If Clifford's first or second read didn't work out, just dump it off to Strange, let him rumble 15 yards. But yeah, it'll be interesting in the NFL, where now the kind of prototypical tight end is more of a kind of a receiving Mike Gesicki 6'6" type of guy, to see kind of what his role might be. since he's a little smaller than most tight ends in the NFL
Little
as far as
little
height.
shorter anyway.
Shorter, right? Yeah, he's a big dude, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I wish him the best, and I just kind of wonder what went into his decision. I guess we'll just really never know.
I think that had to. I really think you bring up an excellent point in the fact that Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren are kind of ready to take that next step, and it's not that because honestly, coming into the season, I'll be the first to admit that I was kind of on the one side saying, could Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren become tight end one themselves, and Brenton Strange solidified his status in that case. So there was the debate, and then he put the debate to rest. So to be a little metaphorical here, why open that debate up again when you showed that you are a capable tight end, when you are the guy and you don't have to split? Because honestly, it's not that, there's a tension to go around, but when Brenton Strange was the only guy and they had to double team him or at least account for him when it was Khalil Dinkins was really the next guy up in some situations, he was more than capable. And I think you might as well strike while the iron's hot rather than leaving it open to, why did he take a step back next year? Not assuming that he would, but it has more to do with not the lack of talent that Brenton Strange has, but the fact that Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren have all the talent that they do.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's hard enough to feed two tight ends. It is three. So obviously, I think that if you really look at next season, Theo Johnson may climb as high as second or third when it comes to receiving, period, on
I
his
hope
team. So. That's the expectations that they're going to need out of him with Washington and Tinsley leaving. So, yeah, I think that it is a big loss because Brenton Strange is kind of that glue guy. But wish him the best, and I hope he finds a role in the NFL that will be prosperous for him.
Matty Fresh, Matt Freiler is joining me on the other side on this Locked On Nittany Lions episode. We're talking Brenton Strange. Where do you think he gets drafted ultimately?
See, this is another thing, right, where you look at a lot of the prospects on Penn State's roster and you'd be able to give a number. He was one where I wasn't even thinking, but I would say somewhere fifth or sixth round. I think it's going to be late. I just don't think there's enough on tape, honestly. And like I said, a lot of tight ends that he's going up against that are 6'7", 6'6", playing in these spread offenses. So it's going to be tough. I think fifth or sixth round probably.
He's going to need the combine in the pro day, definitely. I think he'll get invited because his blocking, I think, will go a long way to at least get him on a roster. So I don't think it should be up for debate. Well, is he going to make cut? I think he'll make a team regardless. And I think the fifth round is probably the case because you do have some like a Michael Mayer out of Notre Dame, a Dalton Kincaid from Utah in this case. Thank God he's not playing in this Rose Bowl. But and you
wonder one more point, Zach, that I kind of wanted to make with all these changes that are happening with college football concerning transfer portal, NIL, and just all the rules that are changing. When will we ever see, if ever, a rule where a player would declare for the NFL draft, go undrafted, and be able to come back to school? Because I think that would probably be pretty soon. That might be next.
I felt like that was in place.
Can you do
I'm
that?
I'm showing some true colors here by the fact that I know that's the case. I think that's the case in the NBA. I thought it was anyway, because I feel like I've heard that. I feel like I have.
Yeah, so. I can't think of a guy that might have done that since I think of a Maurice Claret, way back where it didn't work out for him in the NFL draft. And then he tried to come back to school and it was blocked. But yeah, I don't know what that rule is. I guess you just don't see that many cases, right? Because if a guy declares they know for sure. And we're not saying Brenton Strange isn't going to get drafted. I'm just curious if that might be the next change that would come through. Complicated, obviously.
Yeah, it'll be with NIL and the transfer portal. I can see when, they're looking after the players, so that would definitely benefit the players more than anything else. It is Locked On Nittany Lions. Now, real quickly, before we get into the Rose Bowl itself, Penn State actually picks up somebody in the transfer portal. It's not a special teams guy, so there's a little more to analyze here, and that is Storm Duck. Obviously love the name, but he'll end up on the all-name team next year, but is he going to be a significant contributor? Is he going to be a rotational guy? I'm still kind of scratching my head as far as why Penn State's looking for a guy in the secondary when they have Kalen King and Johnny Dixon expecting both of them to start in 2023.
Yeah, I guess you just kind of take what you can get, right? Storm Duck obviously sees the situation that Penn State has in the defensive back room. And if he's willing to commit with this situation on hand, with all these talented players and all this experience that they have back there in the secondary, I think Storm Duck is telling of his character. He's a guy who wants to compete, right? You don't see a lot of transfers that look at this kind of situation where they maybe would have like a low playing time expectation and come in and say, no, I'm going to compete. I kind of think of like a Johnny Dixon, right? People forget Johnny Dixon was a transfer from South Carolina and had his lumps early on at Penn State, did not look good at times. I remember a play against Michigan State in 2021 where he gave up a touchdown late in the fourth to Jaden Reed. Yeah. But obviously Dixon settled in this year and became a much better player. Now, I don't know about Storm Duck if he has 2 years of eligibility or just the one. I know he was a 4-year player at North Carolina.
Yeah.
So whether he gets one, kind of like Mitchell Tinsley did, or if he's able to play for 2 seasons, that will go a far way. But yeah, haven't seen much on him of tape. I know that North Carolina, for me, was typically a team this season that you would take the over because they didn't play a lot of defense, and it's kind of strange, right? Because Gene Chizik is the defensive coordinator there at North Carolina. So at least he had played for someone like Mac Brown and Gene Chizik, who have a ton of experience and have won national championships. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Obviously, I don't see him in the 2 deep at corner unless he puts together like a great spring ball and shows out. But yeah, we're so loaded at corner. It's like this was kind of the least of our worries. Yeah. I'm still looking for a receiver. I think if Storm Duck can maybe move over and play receiver.
Yeah. How's he in the slot?
Yeah, really. We need a receiver more than a corner, I'd say. But
well, we're going to talk about the current team in our next couple of segments here. The Rose Bowl, Monday, January 2nd, kickoff at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Penn State's taking on Utah. The spread's 2.5, totals 52, or as close there wherever you're looking. And Matty Fresh and I are talking that next on Locked On Nittany Lions. Today's episode is sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. For people watching, you just you're going to have me freak out in the middle of my read there, Matt, with the camera malfunction.
Yeah, can't always make it through without something, right? It's always something here. So,
well, maybe that's a metaphor. I hope it's not a metaphor for our scouting report and our prediction here coming up over the course of these next 2 segments. But I bring because now it's just everywhere, whether it's NFL, whether it's college football, the gambling angle of it. I mean, when you make predictions, I don't see it any differently. So just match up our predictions to the line and then go from there, right? People have been making predictions forever. And now we have the gambling side of it. I'll begin with that. Penn State opened up as the 2.5-point favorite, and then the betting market immediately flipped it around. And I think the total was pushed from 48 to 52. So what were your thoughts on the open? And then now where the line settled at, and despite all the opt-outs, it stayed the same.
Yeah, I think obviously it started out and Penn State was one of the teams that was probably power rated higher in Vegas going into this matchup when it was first announced. And then, after the power ratings take place, obviously you have a system going on out there where the market kind of dictates the money. So a lot of people jumped in on Utah, got Utah early. They liked Utah as an underdog. Obviously a little recency bias there, I think, for bettors watching Utah in the Pac-12 championship game and Penn State not getting to put a game on tape that week. obviously affected it a little bit. Now, this is not the same Utah team that played in the Pac-12 championship game. This is Utah without Dalton Kincaid. This is Utah without Clark Phillips, who arguably is even more of a loss than Kincaid. So obviously Joey Porter might have had a little bit to do with it at the beginning, but I was a little interested in Penn State +3. I think it climbed there for a few days, a couple of weeks ago, and then right back to 2.5, but it will not cross 3, right? We know that it's going to stay under a field goal. And the total to me seems a little low. Obviously Utah's explosion offensively in the Rose Bowl last year. Penn State being a top 20 scoring offense. I think the total is a little low, but obviously Vegas looking at these two teams having solid hit you in the mouth defenses as well. But yeah, I think it's right where it should be. I think there's definitely some value for Penn State as an underdog. Obviously against Michigan did not cover as an underdog. Against Ohio State did not cover as an underdog. That one got away late. That was a bad beat.
Well, depending where you got the line against the Spartans, right?
That is true. Yeah, you're right. You're right for that Michigan State game at the end too. So
Penn State, you got it when it opened,
right?
Because they were at the open. I didn't mean to cut you off, but at the open it was 11. At the open, like the true open, it was 11. I think on FanDuel and DraftKings, and then when it finally settled, it was 19.
Right, and was there another time outside of Michigan and Ohio State where Penn State was an underdog? I don't think so. So
no, because they were a favorite against Purdue, and they were a small favorite against Auburn too.
Right. So you don't cover against Michigan, but you get close against Ohio State. I don't think they did cover, but that might have something to do with it.
They did cover against Ohio State. Cover that one.
Was it 16.5 maybe? Yeah, but I know that one got away late, and I wasn't sure exactly how that worked out.
It was garbage. Garbage time.
Right. Yeah, but I know people look at trends and everything when they're betting, and the market kind of dictates what these numbers will be. But obviously, Penn State's been in a great position all season, not just from a number standpoint, but from a big picture standpoint as an underdog. Obviously, this is a team that opens the season not ranked in the top 25. Mm-hmm. And I think they just play better when they're underdogs, and they have that mentality. And obviously, this season, what was nice is that you didn't lose any games as a big favorite. Took care of business, beat everybody you should have beat, lost to the two teams you're expected to lose to. Now, are people really truly expecting Penn State to lose to Utah? That seems to be 50-50 if you're picking like in a bowl pool, right? I've joined a couple bowl pools, and it seems that one's right on the number of 50-50 in a couple pools. So yeah, I mean, either way you look at it, you give a field goal both ways, but I think there's a ton of value on Penn State here as an underdog. If I would have set this line, I think it would have been probably Penn State -3, which is near what it opened at. So,
yeah, I want to go back to your comments on the total, because I think it's actually, for me personally, I thought 47 was appropriate, and I thought that, or whatever, 47, 48, we're splitting half numbers at this point, but because I just, with the way, even before Parker Washington, opted out of this game, but we knew he wasn't available, Penn State's offense, the dynamic of it has completely changed with him not on the football field. They're more run focused. They're going 2-3 tight ends now that they have all of them back, and they're using just short play action. They're not going over the top. They're not running the big plays because they don't have that deep threat this year. And then on top of that, they don't have Parker Washington. Parker Washington wasn't the vertical threat, but he opened up the field horizontally. And I've made this point, I think 100 times now at this point. He forced teams to defend sideline to sideline with him being in the middle. And then that opened up a Mitchell Tinsley deep. That opened up a Keandre Lambert-Smith when he was on the field deep, the tight ends through the seams. And now that's gone. Defenses can hyper-focus on all of those things that Parker Washington opened up, and now he's not there. So Utah being a run-first team, Utah being heavy tight end sets, Penn State, even though they run a little more pistol and shotgun, are essentially the same thing. They're both power run teams. So with that in mind, I think the clock's going to churn. The ball, there's not going to be a lot of passing. So that just I think there's going to be scoring. It's not going to be 10-6, but to think that one of these teams could get 4 or 5 touchdowns, I think just when I hear some people, I think so-and-so's getting, whether it's Utah or Penn State getting 45, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to be pretty disappointed when one team's in the mid-20s.
Yeah, I'll play devil's advocate. I think Penn State does get close. I think they get close to 40 here. Wow. I think Sean Clifford really opens it up in this game. Back against the wall. This is it. And obviously losing Parker Washington is a huge loss, but they were able to operate the last couple of weeks of the season without him. And Keandre Lambert-Smith emerged a little bit, as well as some of the other threats on the team, like Theo Johnson, like you mentioned. Brenton Strange will play. I just feel like if you watch the UCLA-Utah game, UCLA was able to get what they wanted through the air. And obviously UCLA with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a quarterback with similar experience as Sean Clifford. I think UCLA has some stud receivers as well. I know Bobo's out there, and Utah just did not defend the pass whatsoever that game. Bo Nix was not as effective when they had lost to Oregon. And I'm trying to think just through some of their other games. Obviously, Caleb Williams a little banged up in the Pac-12 title game, but USC, I think in the first meeting, dropped 42 on them. So against good offenses, this team, I don't think the defense is quite as good as what people crack it up to be, especially without Phillips. He's a huge loss. Yeah. But yeah, if you really look at it, I mean, I guess my bias is just that I think the Big Ten is on a whole nother level than the Pac-12 this year. I think it's kind of illustrates the Pac-12 with everybody beating each other. That kind of illustrates the point that it's just not a quality conference. I think that there were some good stories in the conference this year, right? Oregon State being one of them. Caleb Williams obviously wins the Heisman, but I don't know. I just feel like the body of work, Utah lost to Florida. Like, people forget that. And that's a thing that's not a good loss, right? That would have been almost equal to if Penn State had lost to Auburn, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
And they had a shot in that game. Like, I remember watching that game on Labor Day weekend, and I think they were down 2, and they had the ball at the Florida 10-yard line or inside the 10, and they elected to go for it on 4th down instead of kick the – no, it was down by 3. They were down 3. Could have tied it and sent it to overtime, right? And they decided to go for it on 4th down, and I think it was a cross route dropped in the end zone or whatever happened in that game. But, yeah, I was just a little confused at the coaching there. To not kick the field goal and tie it. So I wonder, I know Kyle Whittingham, obviously, a lot of experience. He's an Urban Meyer disciple. And I'm just not too sure that the Pac-12 has seen this kind of offense with these kind of athletes. I know obviously USC would be the one exception, but maybe from more of a running back standpoint, right? They've got some good quarterbacks in that league, but what Penn State's about to hit Utah with a balanced attack where maybe most offenses they faced have been more pass happy. This is now a balanced attack. Penn State's going to keep you on your toes, keep you guessing. And I think Allen and Singleton are going to open up the pass for Sean Clifford. I think he's going to be very efficient. And you're going to see a game, I think, similar to what you had against Minnesota. I could see this, and I won't spoil my score, but I could see this going similar to how that game went. So.
All right, well, we got one more segment, and I want your score prediction and then kind of the difference makers. So you started to get into them, but let's go full in-depth as far as key matchups or head-to-head matchups that you're looking for on both sides, and we'll continue our preview of the Rose Bowl. It is Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Zach Seyko, and over on the other side, he's Matty Fresh. Today's episode is sponsored by NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks, and a few becomes a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds you'll get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Everybody knows about the risks of driving drunk, and the results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while they're under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe and plan to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA. Welcome back to Locked On Nittany Lions. I'm Zach Seyko. He's Matty Fresh, Matt Freiler, author of course, Trace McSorley, who just had his first NFL start. And I imagine you watched that from start to finish.
Yeah, and I tried to keep my phone away for as long as I could because it was just a stressful night. Yeah, we could talk about that for hours. But yeah, I think Trace obviously played as well as he could. He gave it all out there. He battled. And what I will say quickly is I completely disagree with the decision by Cliff Kingsbury to reactivate Colt McCoy and play him. I think that Trace should finish the season as the Arizona Cardinals starter. And there are many reasons why, but this is Locked On Nittany Lions, not Locked On Arizona Cardinals. So we'll save that for them.
Yeah, no, Trey. I thought, and against the top 5 Buccaneers defense, let's just, with that all being said, that's tough to go against in your first NFL career start for anybody. So with that being said, his Penn State Nittany Lions, his former team, are going up against Utah. We've established that they're a 2.5-point underdog. The total set around 51-52, wherever you can get it. You like the over. I think this is going to be a game where just the clock's going to move so fast, and these defenses are really good, but you think that Utah's got some holes in it. So where is Penn State exposing that Utah defense?
Yeah, I think it's going to be in the pass game. I think that obviously Utah has a very solid front seven. But I think there's going to be some questions in the secondary with Clark Phillips being out. That's a lockdown corner. He did not have a lot of balls thrown his way this season. Watched him on tape, just a phenomenal athlete, obviously going to be a first-round pick. Just like Joey Porter. And I think it'll be interesting to see who goes in the draft first. I think you can make an argument for Porter or Phillips. Porter a little bit bigger, but Phillips is just the total package. So, yeah, I think that guys like Mitchell Tinsley and Keandre Lambert-Smith could break out in this game. I know Mitchell Tinsley been a little bit quiet, kind of had a great start to the season, and Parker Washington took it from there. Keandre Lambert-Smith obviously hurt in the Northwestern game. And bounced back with a touchdown against Michigan State, had kind of a coming out party in that game. So, yeah, I think you see Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren continue to get work. I think Brenton Strange will get his. I could see Sean Clifford ending up with something around the neighborhood of a 32 for 41 day. I think it's going to be probably his most pass completions that he has had all season. And I think that's just going to be the way Utah wants to play. It's going to dictate the pace of the game. It's going to be a lot of up and down football. I don't think it's going to be too much of a slogfest because Utah is without Tavion Thomas as well. Obviously, he shut down after Oregon, and man, to not have to go against a 6'2", 240-pound running back, that would have been really, really tough for the Penn State defense. One of the best running backs they had seen all season, outside of Blake Corum and Mo Ibrahim, but. Yeah, I think that it really just comes back to the pass game. I think this is obviously people have been calling it Sean Clifford legacy game. I think it's very true. I think that Sean can have a similar day to as he did against Minnesota. And I think the Penn State defense is poised to just go out there and get key stops and force turnovers. And Cam Rising is a stud. I won't take anything away from him. What he did against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl last year was impressive. But yeah, we'll see, right? Solomon Enos, another guy is going to be interesting in this one as Utah's wide receiver, the son of Curtis Enos. And I know back then when he committed, there was a lot of controversy around, wow, how do we lose Curtis Enos' son, Penn State legend, right? But, it doesn't always work out that way. We saw that with Emmitt Smith. It doesn't always work out with a father-son staying at the same school. But, yeah, I think it'll be an interesting game. I think Utah will want to make this up and down just like they did last year. And I think Penn State has the wits to outscore Utah.
What's the key to stopping Utah's offense? Because they're down Tavion Thomas. Is Thomas Yasmin really going to replicate the same kind of production like Dalton Kincaid had? Yasmin's interesting because he has 12 receptions, which isn't all that much, but he's got 300 yards and 5 touchdowns off of 12 catches. So almost half the time he's scoring a touchdown and turning it into a big play because that's 25 yards per catch. So plus. So is it stop the tight end? Is it stop the ground game? Is a guy like Vele, who's their big receiver, he's 6'5"? Is that going to be a problem for a shorter Johnny Dixon or a Kalen King, who is bigger, but obviously not 6'5"?
Yeah, I think you got it. Utah's balanced just like Penn State, right? Utah wants to smack you in the mouth up front. They still have some decent tailbacks, even though Tavion Thomas is no longer there. Cam Rising can run the ball. He's more of a rushing threat than, people don't give Sean Clifford credit. He is a mobile quarterback, but I think Cam Rising probably likes to run a lot more than Sean Clifford. At least that's the way the offense is designed. So I think it's just Rising got going early in last year's Rose Bowl, and I get it. That's different teams and different situations. But I think Cam Rising, he's kind of one of those players that he plays with his heart on his sleeve, and once he gets going, he's hard to stop. So it's maybe picking him off a couple times in the first half, getting a few sacks, Penn State's defensive line getting a good pass rush, and then Kalen King just absolutely balling out and continuing to be a ball magnet back there. And it's just going to be so fun to watch Tate Brown. I think that if I had to guess, Tate Brown will lead the team in tackles here because he's just going to be all over the field, laying it all on the line for this one. But yeah, I think you have two similar styles of offense, both kind of balanced, both can run and throw the ball, both with very experienced quarterbacks and targets on the outside. I just think Penn State has a little more speed in this one, and that's what it's going to come down to.
I think, and I'm going to ask you for a score prediction here in a second. I think offensively, Utah defensively has to blitz as much as they do because they can't get after the quarterback with four. That's something that I'm hearing ramp up in the conversations, that the defensive line just can't get home. And that helps not only a rejuvenated Penn State offensive line when it comes to, pushing everybody back, setting the line of scrimmage. And then Utah's like, well, now we got to sell out for the run. And then that's where any of those three tight ends can get involved because I think the play action is just going to kill Utah. So with that being said, that's like my key matchup is Penn State's offensive line versus Utah's defensive line. And then ultimately that play action and Sean Clifford keeping the balls. One of the best plays was him keeping it against Michigan because it faked out Gus Johnson and everyone in Ann Arbor. So I think he'll run the ball, not necessarily a whole bunch, but I think he'll run the ball effectively, and Utah's just not really going to have an answer here. I was on the lower scoring end, so I'm going to go first. Originally, I was 24-20 because I thought the clock would churn out, but I'm going to give another 7 to Penn State here and say 31-20. I think they win by the two scores here, and it might even be 35-20 because I really don't see them kicking field goals because of the running game that they have now and the offensive line with Olu Fashion being back, Caden Wallace. We know Drew Scruggs is playing. All the tight ends are 100%. The running backs finally got some time off. Even Kevon Lee could be back. So I will say 31-20, but I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State does convert another touchdown rather than settling for a field goal here.
Yeah, I said it last episode. I've been saying it all year. I think there are maybe 6 or 7 teams in the country at this point that Penn State would be an underdog to. I'm shocked that Utah is one of those because if you look at the top 10 teams in the country, I don't think you would put Utah in the top 6. So I'm a little shocked at this line. Like I mentioned before, I think the market has a lot to do with it. I think a lot of market has been doubting Penn State all year. I'm going to go Penn State 38, Utah 21.
Okay. So similar ballpark here, but you think Penn State puts up some more points. And we didn't even talk about, the turnovers you said that could happen. Getting to Cam Rising is definitely going to be a major key here. Matty Fresh is over on the other side. Matt Freiler joining me on another episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. Matt, before I let you go, how can people follow your work and stay connected with you?
Yeah, of course. Follow me on Spotify and Apple Music or wherever you get your music. I'm on there as Matty Fresh. You can subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Some big things coming for 2023. And follow me on Twitter at Matty Fresh TV.
All right, perfect. Matt, thanks so much for your time. As always, looking forward to another conversation in the not too distant future and have a fun time out there in Pasadena.
Yeah, we'll see you on the other side of the new year. Appreciate it, Zach.
All right, that will do it. Thanks so much for tuning in for another episode of Locked On Nittany Lions. I hope you enjoyed the show with myself, Zach Seyko, and Matty Fresh. It's always great to connect with him on these shows. And It's finally here. All this month of preparation and previews and everything. Go back through some of the older videos because all the information is still relevant, with Penn State taking on Utah in the Rose Bowl Monday, January 2nd. It's going to be a fun game. I like Penn State in this one, and you should too, as they are just the better team and a more balanced team, as that should be the conversation that Utah won't necessarily be able to handle when all said and done. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a fun game, and we'll react to all of it and recap the season and start our conversation about 2023. That is all coming up here on Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.